Get pucked. I don't know why, but for me, it's the draft lottery day.
Well,
There's
I know
something
why.
about that that's just so like for that like whatever it is, when they get to the top whatever, the top 5, and it's like that 20-second period with Daly there flipping those boards, it's just it gets your heart pumping, man. It's like there's that chance. There's that chance that he flips 5 and it's not the Canadiens, and then your mind goes nuts. You're like, oh my God, we're top 1 too. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And that moment is probably a higher high than all the other ones, even though the other ones are more important. So
you know, but you said it. You said it there, and that's what I was going to add to it before
yeah.
you, like you said, it was the fact that the chance of winning the number 1 spot and not being there. Like Montreal, when they drafted Slav, it was projected they were likely going to be first overall. It was in the story. That's what it is. They had to lose. This is you're actually winning to move up,
win it,
right? So it's like if we're watching that whole lottery draft. If Montreal doesn't appear at 5, you're holding your breath.
Well,
And then all of a sudden, if they show up at 1, I'm probably buying a Macklin celebrating jersey.
Now, bear in mind,
celebrating whatever.
Bear in mind, if they open 7 and you see the Habs, it's like a gut punch. Because then they move back to, and that means like Seattle flew up and got it's something nuts like this. So I don't know. To me, that moment, that day,
if anybody's gonna move up, if you're one of those conspiracy theorists, if anyone's gonna move up, it's gonna be Utah.
So okay, perfect pivot because this I want to talk about this. I'm not here to rip on Arizona, and it sucks. And being from a city that lost a professional team, I have no joy in it. Did they deserve to be gone? Absolutely, they did. But I sympathize with the fan base in Arizona without question. That said, do you guys believe now with Alex Smith and the new owner, the new ownership of this Utah team, who apparently has outright said, we're spending, we're making splashes. Does that change the dynamic of this offseason a little bit or 100%. Dramatically?
100%. Now, is it going to change for the Montreal Canadiens? To be determined. But when you have a new team like that, with a new mindset, with all the picks that they have, they can make splashes and they can go and acquire players that you'd probably scratch your head about, or they could acquire players and say, wow, we didn't see that coming. There's a lot of teams that are going to be out of the playoffs soon or didn't make it, that are going to need, that have traded a lot of their draft picks over the years, that are going to need some draft picks, and they might be willing to wheel and deal with Utah. You know, so it adds a whole different dynamic. Before, when it was the Arizona Coyotes, we're like, okay, who's getting dumped on their roster?
Yeah,
that's what you have to look at. You looked at the Arizona roster, and you're like, okay, their Shea Weber's contract is still there, but you know they had the Datsuks and the Hosas and all that stuff that have passed over the years, and now they need to add more players to hit the draft floor. Now you have this new owner that comes in and says, we don't care about the draft floor. We're going to spend. We're going to see what we can get. We're going to add to the team. It adds another potentially very active general manager, a very active ownership group. And the last team one of the last expansion teams that come into the NHL, which was Vegas, they said the same thing. They were going to be aggressive. And you know what? They've been aggressive from day one. And they have made exciting moves.
Yeah, but there's an expansion team after Vegas that's not quite the same.
No, but they also made the playoffs very soon after they joined the NHL. So they've been doing quite well. And while during their expansion draft, other teams learned. Clearly, they learned on
soon after.
It was soon after, so they kind of knew what not to do after the Vegas expansion draft. And you know what? You look at that, Seattle still had some success. They still got some good, promising players there, and still had a playoff run to give their fan base some entertainment along the way. So all that to say, and now you have somebody like in Utah that's saying we're going to spend. Yeah, it does change the whole dynamic because you're going to see certain players, even if they do have a high cap, going probably that way just to, one, hit the floor, but two, to add a different dynamic to that roster. They got to attract people there. Like they sold their tickets and all that stuff, but they got to put something on the ice that's going to be a product that's going to be entertaining as well. And right now, the current roster, that's the former Arizona Coyotes, is not exciting enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. There's obviously going to be, there's going to be a lot of moves. Like Vegas example is very, very good because Vegas came in, and they seemingly get everybody all the time. You know, every time
Well, they
there's
trade all their firsts.
yeah, and every time there's a big move to be made, it's Vegas is in on it. And whenever there's a big player available, Vegas is in on it. And they actually landed Jack Eichel. They make it happen, right? It's not they got Pietrangelo. They're big movers. So that's another person that a contender has to contend with. That like now this team, you never have to worry about Arizona someone sneaking off to Arizona, right? Like Arizona was the last case scenario for a lot of players in terms of free agency. I'm sure players vetoed trades to there. I'm like it was a last thought organization, and now all of a sudden, I mean, who knows? It still has to play out. I'm sure there's a lot of players who are still going to be iffy about going to Utah. I'm sure there's a lot of players who aren't sure. But at that being said, maybe not in free agency, but trade moves and stuff like that. Like I think it's going to be interesting to see where he puts his money, if he puts his money where his mouth is, and if things move. But and if it does, it absolutely changes the landscape of the NHL because it's just another team with the means to do something, which is ideally what you want. You want 32 teams who have the means to do things all the time. And that's what you should be striving for if you're Gary Bettman, instead of these teams that are no man's lands, that are just salary cap dumps and this and that. I mean, so it makes the NHL more exciting. I'm all for it. It'll make things a little bit more difficult for the other GMs too along the way.
Which is a great thing for the upcoming offseason. And in particular, it reminds me that while the same management is there, it's the same GM, it's the same coach, it's the same everybody. When you have an owner he's a younger guy, I don't know how heavily involved he's going to be, but he wants like Vito and like you suggested, you want the product to be exciting. It's a new team. You want people to show up, and it makes me wonder when he says splashes and stuff. Is he prepared to change the entire face of that team? Like, I'm not saying he's looking to go and trade Logan Cooley because he's just drafted. He's a high draft pick. But a guy like, for example, Clayton Keller, who would be coveted by other teams and has been on the Arizona Coyotes for a long time. Are you prepared to ditch him out to go and get something else to start making your new mark, the new team?
I don't know about moving Clayton Keller, but he'll have to make moves because every owner, general manager, whomever, when they take over a team, they want to put their stamp on that team. So especially like we're talking about when it's a general manager that's being hired, it's one thing. When it's a whole ownership and it's a whole new city, it's a whole new everything. That's like right now, no matter how you spin it, it's Arizona's team. You put a different label on it, but it's Arizona's team. They're gonna want to make moves that's gonna look and say, we're embarking on this journey. This is the next, this is the.
I only mention it because you got to give to get in all scenarios. And to your point, they have a lot of draft picks, and I for sure expect them to trade some of those picks to bring in players. But at the same time, they have guys there that have been there for a while that are, we'll call them decent. And then you have like one or two that sit at the top that are actually really good players. I mean, the fact that you have a guy on that team like Keller who put up the numbers he puts up on the abysmalness that was that team. I mean, you could see teams out there being like, listen, I'm going to pay a lot for him. It'll jumpstart you in Utah. You could do this, that.
Then they'll likely do it. They'll likely do it. And especially if it's a person for a player that's also more marketable than Keller, then they'll do it. There's a marketing aspect to all of this too. There's a marketing angle. There's an off-ice angle to this when it comes to Utah as well. Is Keller the guy that they could literally put as the face of that franchise and make him basically the market?
It just makes me wonder. I think about it from a perspective. I'm curious to know in the ownership's mindset, do they view this as like, hey, we're a brand new team? We're like an expansion team where first round picks are what we covet? Or are they looking to be like, we had a team, not great, lot of holes, but the holes that could be solved by money, which the former ownership didn't want to do, we can do, and they kind of bolster it that way. That's what I'm curious to know what they're looking to do.
It wouldn't surprise me. Here, this will be my bold take. It wouldn't surprise me if they put depending what happens with the lottery draft, if that first round pick for this year is available. It wouldn't surprise me.
It's the one way to make a splash right now, pretty much. Is to move something like that.
Yeah,
it's gonna be interesting. I mean, again, like Clayton Keller, you can move them all you want, but like their roster is so bad that like they don't have much on there. So like, why not keep? You have other assets in terms of draft picks and other ways to get it than to deal Clayton Keller out of there. Although who knows like his motivation right now on being on that team. It just it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I think they'll be probably leaning more towards making a splash than not. And I think that's what they're going to go for. I think that maybe you see that pick moved. If not, you'll see some other deals down the road.
Hey, I'm just connecting dots here, but could who could use some young prospect defense and a first round pick for a star player? I think Toronto Maple Leafs could use a situation like that.
I mean, to be honest,
partners.
When you're looking at Mitch Marner play and you're looking and you're shipping him out, like that would be but Mitch Marner will not waive his no trade clause to go to Utah. I'm telling you right now, I don't see it happening.
I don't see that happening either.
But ideally, if you're the Leafs, that'd be gold mine if you could move him and get some good defensive help and good picks and kind of extract a lot from Utah. It would be amazing, but I just don't see it happening.
I'm just looking at their team right now.
It's awful.
I mean,
it's like the Canadiens. It's like in terms of like point getters and stuff like that. It's like very early 2000s Canadiens.
It's very
very bad. What you have to look at when it comes to, I was about to say Arizona, but Utah is when you're looking on Cap Friendly, for example, look at that block where you see the number of picks over the next 3 years. That's the most exciting part of that roster.
Well, it's but hear me out about this, and I'm not trying to take a pessimistic view just because of who they are. Yes, they have 3 picks in the second round next year, 4 picks in the second round the year after, and 3 picks in the second round the following year. Do second round picks hit? They hit. They do, but the odds of them hitting are very low. Now, they got a lot more darts to throw at the board. It gives them a greater chance.
The next 2 drafts are pretty, like the one coming up.
But they're second round picks. I'm just saying they're second round picks. Now, they'll probably be high second round picks because they're probably going to be terrible. So that does help the cause a bit. But at the end of the day, I got it imprinted in my brain mostly, minus remembering the percentages. But Brian Wild's chart that he always shows about the percentages of NHL making it versus stars versus just barely getting in. You get to that second round, your probability of making and actually being an NHL regular, forget being a star, just an NHL regular, is like incredibly low. So they need first rounders. They need first rounders. Could they package a bunch of these picks to start moving up? Maybe. Could they do? I don't know. But I can tell you one thing. They have no active player, minus Clayton Keller, that has any value. Literally, they're not trading Logan Cooley. That's not happening. They have nobody playing defense. I don't even know. They have no goaltending. Their prospect pool, I recognize a couple names, but it ain't great. And you're not looking to trade prospects if you're building up they literally have nothing. All they have is their picks. That's it. And the ability to take in cap. That's all they have. That's all they have.
Well, that's where they're going to have to get creative. And I think, you said it. They're not going to trade Logan Cooley. I don't think they'll trade Clayton Keller. You have to add to this roster, not subtract or exchange, right? So like you have to kind of get creative in the way you're going to do things. And I think that you can add cap is one way of doing it. And also, the draft picks, second round draft pick, you're right about the odds, but they're still assets in today's NHL, right? At the trade deadline, who's looking,
they're
looking
trading
for
those
second round
picks. Yes,
yeah,
they're trading those picks.
Even if it's for players that to some teams that would be considered a quote unquote cap dump, but for them it's actually a serviceable player that could, NHL body that they could put right away that could produce. They're going to do those types of moves. That's how they're going to have. That's how Vegas did a lot of the moves too at the beginning too. Is they went and get some players that teams were looking and say, oh, okay, here, take this. We don't care. But then look at them once they got to Vegas. They got into the hype. They went to that run. It's like there's going to be some players that you're going to most likely look and say, what the heck is Utah doing going to grab this player? And it's going to work for them because that's what they need. They need an NHL product to put on the ice now.
Get pucked.